Well, you made it. Week 8. Congratulations. You only got one more week left. I hope there's a lot of lamenting. I'm sorry for all the email. You probably used it by now. So I hope there's not too much lamenting, sorrow, sadness that this class is coming to an end. I have enjoyed putting it together. Hopefully, as I've mentioned at the bazillion, probably ad nauseum at this point, that you've enjoyed, found value in the content. Even if you haven't enjoyed it all the time, at least you found value into it and it's challenged you to think about things that we're dealing with today in wellness from a little bit more holistic perspective, looking back into the ideas of modernity and understanding if you want to see changes in a particular area of wellness, you're going to have to address the past issues of modernity that have influenced them. Okay, and again, as always, we've touched only on a few things. We could talk about a lot more. I'd love to do this class, as I'm sure you would love to take it. Love to do this class for years, like 2 years of this, just covering each topic really in depth. Yeah, I know you're excited. All right, well, let's finish up. I call this collage week because we get to look at pictures, right? This is like when I was in public school, the last week of class, we'd watch a bunch of movies. Like this is like collage week, but this actually, unlike when I was at the schools I was going to, hopefully still learning something and not just trying to pass the time. Okay, aesthetics. Okay, what the heck is that? Aesthetics is the beauty of things, right? I wanted to kind of touch on this. This may seem like kind of what? Okay, and this is kind of, if you look at the liberal arts, right, we're talking about art, right? But this is, if you look at aesthetics and how they changed and what we appreciate as beauty and political influences, I mean, you'll see a significant impact of aesthetics in your own personal wellness, right? Directly, like you might appreciate a beautiful sunrise or appreciate nature, and you have some material to talk about that, appreciate food. Okay, we talk about nutrition many times. Again, we focus on the reductionist approach. Like, if I can only eat this vegetable and I cannot eat sugar. Okay, well, many times what's satisfying about food is the way it looks and smells. Right? Its presentation can be wonderful. I mean, and this can be fast food. This can be ultra processed food too. But we oftentimes undervalue what food looks like, and certainly undervalue its taste. And we can get real narrow in our tastes as well, right? And think that, well, only the food that's bad for me tastes good, right? I hear that all the time dealing with nutrition. Only the ultra processed stuff is what tastes good. Well, you haven't really had a chance to taste much then. I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm the same way. My wife introduced me to asparagus, and I was 23 years old, right? So, I've been there. I grew up in, like I mentioned before, a single family home, and when we lived fast food, right? And so my palate was very narrow. Okay, I always thought it was too expensive to eat, these beautiful foods and these, those healthy foods won't taste good. It's because I never tried. And so that's part of this week as well, is just thinking about this idea of aesthetics, and how does it impact our wellness? Well, significantly. You can imagine through a variety of conduits. Very few things will impact our wellness as significantly across multiple dimensions as aesthetics will. Okay, so here is the definition. A set of principles concerned with the nature and appreciation of beauty, especially in art, the branch of philosophy that deals with principles of beauty and artistic taste. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about this. All right, let me ask you, what is beautiful? You may have heard the famous phrase, right? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I'm going to push on that a little bit. Is that true? Like if I put these drawings in front of you, okay, paintings, drawings, okay, in front of you, which ones are beautiful? Okay, now if I told you that the bottom right hand corner, right, the stick figures, was drawn by a world famous artist and has an elaborate understanding of art and lines, and you can see the evolution in this picture. And the middle person is modern man, and the one on the right is the enlightened man, and the one on the left was man from antiquity. And we can see that we move from the left to the right and passing modern man along the way and arriving at modern man finally in the middle, seemingly passing him right by through the alignment, realizing the modern man was in front of us all along. Right? Is that a beautiful picture then? Yeah, I made all that up. Okay, that's a drawing from a child. All right. The picture that's underneath me here, the squiggly lines, that is from Jackson Pollock, who was regarded as a world famous artist. Let me ask you something, and honestly, is that a beautiful picture? I don't know. And I know some of you may be more art buffs than I am. But on the surface, I would say, the Last Supper and Michelangelo's picture, or painting, not picture, the Sistine Chapel, that's beautiful art, right? The shading, the color, just absolutely beautiful, okay? So I think this idea of beauty in the eye of the beholder, there may be something to that, okay? But there is still things that are just beautiful and things that maybe aren't. And so, evaluate that as people tell you what's beautiful. Well, what is beautiful and what's not? I think if people honestly would sit down and look at something that, it is in front of them, like I did with the stick figures, and say, is this beautiful? Okay. Now, if that's my kid's drawing, of course I might think it's beautiful. That's beauty in the eye of the beholder, but that's not because it's a beautiful painting. It's beautiful because my kid made it, right? That's the reason. There's something else behind it, but it itself is not a work of art that I would expect to be put up in a museum. Okay. So just something to think about as we define this word beautiful. Okay. There are things that are clearly beautiful and things that maybe aren't as beautiful. All right. Now, I put this into the context of nutrition. Hopefully you're not hungry. And how, again, how important aesthetics are. It's been lost in food. I mentioned this at the beginning. I mean, you look at your protein powder or protein bars and even a cheeseburger, which may look appealing. I'd love McDonald's. I haven't had a cheeseburger from McDonald's or hamburger in a long time, but I still remember that chemical processed taste, and I love it. That's from my childhood too. That's some nostalgia associated with it, and I like me some protein bars in the run. So it's not like these things are good or bad. But if you're looking at these foods, okay, you see the meal prep on the right, we should call it leftovers, and then the food on the bottom, that chicken pasta, it looks delicious. Okay, which of these is more appealing? I kind of biased you a little bit because I said that bottom looks delicious. Okay, I shouldn't have said that. But on the surface, which of these pictures is immediately appealing? And you could say there's some photography, sure, but there's tricks in photography in all these products. Okay, which one looks more appealing? Well, I'm not going to tell you which one, but I would imagine the more colorful ones would, right? Even the hamburger might look more appealing than the protein bar, even though it's chocolate, right? Just because of the aesthetics of it. Well, what changed? We have down in the left-hand corner there the McDonald's brothers. And by the way, they sold out way too early. I think they got like $3 million for their idea, and that McDonald's today is worth not $3 million. But there's this idea that aesthetics can be threatened by uniformity. Okay, and this may sound familiar, conformity and individuality when we looked at different governmental structures, right? And I'll show you some examples how political ideology does affect architecture. Okay, but what really flourishes when it comes to even like food aesthetics is the individuality. That cheeseburger, the idea with the McDonald's brothers is they for good or bad, I'm just talking as a point, because I just said a little bit ago, I used to like me some hamburger. I used to eat a lot of, I won't tell you what kind of sandwich I had from McDonald's, because every time I tell my wife I used to eat a lot, she's like, are you serious? Nobody likes those. I'm like, well, I did. And so, anyway, but they basically turn food into a conveyor belt, right? They industrialize food. So everybody squeezed the ketchup bottle. That's their only job. They didn't follow the hamburger all the way through. Just like an assembly line, like building a car, your station at the car was to put the widget on the wadget, and that's what you did over and over again. You didn't get to work with the whole car all the way through, and so that's some mind-numbing work too. And that's okay, because you're just a worker that does one thing, so I can easily replace you if you don't want to work here anymore. I'll just hire somebody else and pay them the same wage because they want a job, and then they get tired of it. It doesn't matter because you're a low-skilled worker. You don't have a lot of skill set that I need. Okay, and that's what was done with food. And the idea too is that there's uniformity from a McDonald's hamburger would taste the same anywhere. All right, so everything upstream from that has to be the same. This is where you get feedlots and such stuff like that. Okay, well, there's some things to be gained from that, to be certain. You can produce a lot of food that way. If you do like the taste of a hamburger here in Oklahoma, and you want to taste the same in Maryland, then you will. Okay, if you want to taste the same across the world, it probably will. Okay, but what's lost in that, right? The variety and the enjoyment of food. Okay, there's the older I get, I think I reference my wife, who had a much different upbringing. I'll give you a little personal story. She had more of a variety of food in her life. Because of my upbringing, I had a very narrow bandwidth of food. And I feel like even in my age now, I'm still just discovering all the amazing flavors and colors and configurations of food. I'm just getting started. And maybe some of you feel that same way. I don't know. Okay. That doesn't say I don't still pound a protein bar every once in a while, especially on, portable food. And, not that McDonald's isn't attractive anymore, right? It's just that I'm old and can't tolerate it as much anymore. But I think we've lost some of the individuality of our food, even aesthetics of it. Okay. So, all right. So big deal. Food looks better or doesn't. Does it have any effect on, actual intake and health? Well, first of all, off to the right side is the ultra-processed versus unprocessed food. So it goes without saying that food that is considered healthier, that home-cooked meal usually looks better too, but this is from a study of cell metabolism. And you can see ad libitum, meaning what they did. I like this study a lot. It's very interesting. They let individuals eat whatever they want, and all they did was told the differences was that they limited the ultra-processed food. Okay? And so then they could eat ad libitum, right? And just within these kind of narrow, kind of these wide bandwidths, all right? So it was only the idea was only the food selection that was limited, okay? You can see the blue line was the amount of caloric intake as compared to the red line, which is unprocessed, about a 500 calorie difference. Not surprisingly, body weight increase in ultra-processed food occurred while the unprocessed food individuals lost weight, okay? So you could, if you want to put this really applied, you could lose weight on ultra-processed food diet, but you're probably going to have to cut even 500 calories more. And those 500 calories come from the fact that it's easier to overconsume ultra-processed food. Part of that goes back to the satiety of the food, how happy it makes you feel. Okay? Well, if food makes you happy, okay, then it more likely will, like the way it looks even and smells, it probably will satisfy you faster than food that isn't. And food that satisfies faster and looks better and smells better, more than likely is unprocessed food, right? So there's this whole chain, when we look at specialized diets all the time, that maybe this is a little simpler than we think. We just need to eat better quality food. And I know the natural barriers is too expensive, and that's not accurate either. That's good marketing. And the reality is that cheeseburger that is only $1 is not really $1, okay? It's subsidized, right? In the same way that universities are subsidized, we talked about in the last lecture, there are food that are subsidized that corporate bodies have lobbied for, and that's why your cheeseburger is $1. How is this cheeseburger so cheap? It's not. You're still paying for it. It's just you're paying for it in your tax. Let's look at this figure off to the left of this big table that I provided. It's not a figure, it's a table. At the top, find home-cooked meals. Okay, this is from a study, by the way. You can see the reference below, right next to where I am, like right here. Okay. But you can see all these different variables across the first column. So you have dash score, MDS, vitamin C, fruit intake, vegetable intake, and then you get in some health markers using odds ratios, cholesterol, BMI, body fat, A1C, and hypertension. All those are yes or no dichotomies, right? So high risk, low risk, over. Okay, all right. So let's just look. We can look at the adjusted value. So there's unadjusted and adjusted. We'll look at the adjusted, okay? And look at fruit intake. So follow fruit intake over through 3 to 5 times per week. Home cooked meal. What does it do to fruit intake? Well, 3 to 5 times per week is 27.17. Now, for a lot of people, that could be 0 if they have no fruit. So there's going to be some positive effects just from eating 3 to 5 times a week. Okay, but look at over 5 times. 62.33, double, right? Over double the amount on average of fruit intake in grams per day. Look at vegetables down below that, 50.54 to 97.83, just by getting more than 5 meals per week. So just by having a home cooked meal, that's going to produce healthier food. Okay, healthier food choices. You got to put it together. You have to make the effort to do so. You're probably going to select foods though that are healthier overall, right? And these foods don't have to be expensive. Right. Let's look at some of the health markers like cholesterol binary, high versus low risk. Okay, depending on the cutoff here. You can see that the adjusted value 0.96 and then 0.87. So these are odds ratios, and the lower the number, that means you're lowering. So 1 is the reference. Okay, you're lowering the negative outcome associated. So, for example, the 3 to 5 meals is 0.96. By having 5 meals per week, you went down to 0.87. So the odds ratio was reduced. That's a good thing. Okay. If you look at BMI, 0.81 to 0.7, And if you look down at body fat, okay, whether excess or not, based on the number that they drew, was an arbitrary number they drew, 0.89 to 0.71, A1C 0.83 to 0.68, and then hypertension, not that much difference. Okay, so again, just having home cooked meals. The takeaway is having home cooked meals makes a significant impact on dietary quality. Okay, so when we talk about pulling in other things, when we look at nutrition, is if you're spending time with somebody as well as you eat this, you're getting even more of an effect.